Well, good Monday morning to you, and welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Drs. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Cowan-Lorraine Road in Gulfport, south of Pass Road. If you're new to viewing the show, this is what we do every Monday morning, and it is a live call-in show. And what we do is we pick a topic that has to do with helping you live a healthier lifestyle. And you're invited to call in with your questions at 896-0713 or 800-349-0713, and we'll pass the questions along to the doctors. You know, when you get a prescription for something, you always get the long list of things and do's and don'ts and whatever you take. This is the dosage that you take and everything for optimum results, you know, to make you feel better. But what about nutrients? You know, somebody says, oh, you need some more vitamin C or you need some more vitamin D or something like that. And might be something else that you need. And you're taking too much more vitamin D or E or whatever could be detrimental to your health. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. What are the optimal doses of common nutrients?
Yeah, we get those calls a lot. People calling and saying, okay, how much of this can I take? How much of this can I take? How much can you go up to? So we're going to talk about some of just the common things that people, you know, the nutrients. And we want to say it first. Now, we're not saying go out and take every nutrient we talk about. We're not saying everybody needs every dose. We're just saying these are kind of the generalized dosing, and it is, you know, we are going to talk about the ones you can get too much of, and what not to go over is one of the big things. But always the best way to tell what you need for your body is to do the testing, because lab work will tell you for you. Everybody's different. Everybody absorbs different. Nutrients are very different. So that's why you do want to do the lab work. It's the best way to know, but we are going to talk about some of the things because a lot of people don't do it and they just take nutrients, and we want y'all, you know, kind of to know the basics.
Yeah, a lot of people, we get a lot of people and they've read an article in some magazine or something. And it says, you know, such and such is so great for you. Boy, they start taking it, you know. Well, really and truly, it might be good for you, who knows? But you really need to kind of think about that, and are you taking something else that might, you know, interfere with, or, you know, so that's the kind of questions we get daily.
Because I mean, I would think that if you are taking a prescription medication, it can also affect the nutrients that you're taking.
Yes.
No doubt.
Definitely.
No doubt.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
no
true.
Doubt. That's very true. Yeah.
We're going to start with the fat solubles.
Yeah.
Fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. So those are kind of your fat soluble vitamins. On fat soluble vitamins, you always want to take it with food.
Right.
It needs fat for absorption. So on any of the fat solubles, just know, because another question we get a lot, and we're going to tell people is, do I take it with food? Do I take it on an empty stomach? How do I take it? Actually, the fat solubles, and none of the fat solubles will keep you awake either.
Oh, no.
So you can take them at night, you can take them in the morning, just need to be with food.
Right.
So the first one we're going to talk about is vitamin A.
Yeah, you know, vitamin A, and a lot of times you'll see vitamin A on something, and they'll say it supplies 100% of the daily requirements of vitamin A, but it might be beta carotene or one of the carotenoids. And those are good because that's the pro-vitamin A. It means your body can convert it into the retinoid. However, there are some of us, I'm one, that has a mutation in a gene, the BCO1, and that particular gene doesn't allow us to convert, or doesn't help us convert the beta carotene to vitamin A. So we actually need the actual vitamin A or retinoid. And you know, most of the time, if you look at actual vitamin A, even for somebody like myself who can't convert carotene, 5,000 units is a pretty good dose.
Right.
It really is.
And people, for some reason, tend to be scared of vitamin A, but people used to be scared of vitamin D.
Yes,
so it's one of the things, because it is fat soluble, it can build up, and you don't want to overtake vitamin A, no doubt. But for different conditions, you can go higher.
Right.
And we're not talking again today about specific, you know, conditions and how much to take. We're just talking about generalized.
Yeah.
So, you know, our ADK2 actually has a good amount of vitamin A, and that's actually good. A lot of your multis only have beta carotene. And like I said, the more research that comes out on genetic mutations knows that you cannot, some people can't convert that. And so you do want some vitamin A. And actually a lot of your vitamin A comes from fish,
And the ADK2, I take one every other day.
Right, because of the vitamin D. We actually checked your level, and you don't need quite what's in the D. So you kind of have to look at that and go from there. But but A is, you know, like I said, it's good for the skin, it's good for the eyes, it's good
immune
for
system.
a lot of the immune system. It's good for a lot of things, and people are kind of afraid of A. The one group of people that should stay away from A is somebody with a lot of liver problems. So that is one group that probably shouldn't do a lot of vitamin A.
Right. Vitamin D is another one. And of course, we get 1,000 questions a day on vitamin D.
Yeah.
I mean, we really do. How much do I need? How much do I need? And pretty much any adult, about 2,000 units is kind of a minimal dose. You know, I mean, I don't think I've seen anybody that could do less than that and maintain a proper level when we do the blood work of the vitamin D.
Now, even with breastfeeding babies, they recommend giving them a little D, and that's usually about 500. And even a little older kid, most of them can take 1,000
or more.
So, and then, like I said, that one definitely. I mean, really, when you look at people that are vitamin D deficient, it usually takes at least 5,000 or more to help the deficiency. What we absolutely don't suggest is just going out and taking 15, 20,000 a day, which we have people that do that.
We do.
And they're usually too high when we check. I mean, so they've been told by somebody else, not us, to take a huge amount, and that it didn't matter if you took too much. That's not true. So we do see a lot of people that do that. We really do. And they're taking 15 to 20,000 a day. I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
So, now,
another one is E. The vitamin E. You know, and vitamin E is, you know, 40 years ago we took vitamin E because a lady named Adele Davis wrote a book. I forgot the name of the book now, but she told us to take vitamin E. It's really important for you. And sure enough, the science has proved that it really is important for us. I mean, it's so good for the, you know, for the brain. I mean, it's got so many features, the skin, everything. I mean, it's just amazing how vitamin E can help. But again, it's one of those you can get too much of. Rare do we see somebody take too much of it, but it could. And somewhere around, probably around 400 units a day is usually what we recommend.
Kind of like an average.
That's an average.
Now, there is a really good blood test that we do that actually tells you how much E you have, and it splits it up in both alpha and gamma. So they're a little bit different tocopherols, and that test would show you exactly which one you need. We have some that are higher in alpha and some that are higher in gamma.
Right.
So that's a really good way of knowing, is to do a test and see where you are for vitamin E. But it is really good for skin and antioxidant and you know, all that. So E is really important, and people kind of have stopped taking it, and I don't really know why, because E is very important, especially for the brain.
Too
and
focused on
for
D.
Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's Foundation actually recommends like 2,000 because it's really good for people that actually have dementia and Alzheimer's.
Okay. All right, we're talking about nutrients, the proper dosage of those. 896-0713, 800-349-0713. Our phone lines are open if you have a question. Pick up the phone, give us a call. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. It's our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. This morning we're talking about optimal doses of your common nutrients. We've talked about vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin D, and of course you can take too much. So that's why we've decided, the doctors decided to have this discussion this morning. So if you have a question regarding that, and maybe you're taking too much of something or not enough, please pick up the phone and give them a call.
Yeah. One of the last of the fat solubles that we like to talk about is K. And vitamin K, you know, can be a problem if people have anticoagulant problems or coagulation problems, blood too thick or whatever, you know. So, you know, and for some reason, a lot of people are on medications that you can't take K1, but you have to divide that K into K1 and K2. For years and years and years, it was just K, okay. But now the science has told us, well, there's K1, there's K2, and there's actually a whole bunch of K2s. But that's when we look at it, you know, we look basically at K1, which causes the clotting. That's the clotting factor. Germans helped us name that. They use K instead of a C. So it's vitamin K. So now that you have that, but in your green leafy vegetables, you probably get enough K. Most likely. Most people get enough K1. Now K2, that's a totally different story. It's virtually impossible to get in the normal American diet. I mean, I would say nobody gets it.
Right. And we don't recommend, unless there's a specific problem you're dealing with, don't supplementing K1.
Right.
in any specific amount by itself. I mean, what's in a tiny bit that's in a multi is usually okay. But the K2, we definitely supplement, especially in people that are vitamin D deficient. You always want to take K2 with vitamin D. You don't want to take vitamin D by itself. K2 is essential for bone density and helping the D get into the bone, and it actually helps with getting plaque out of the arteries. So we usually, our separate K2 is 500 micrograms, which in Europe, they've done some pretty big doses, way bigger than that, to actually help with certain conditions and plaque and things like that. So on K2, you definitely can supplement that, and as to me, as you get older, you definitely want to. But K1, we don't recommend supplementing.
No, K2 is different. Like I say, it's one. A lot of people, if they've got osteopenia, osteoporosis, they've had a DEXA scan, and all of a sudden, boom, you got a problem. What's been coming on for a long time, and one of the reasons probably we see so much of it today is lack of D and K2.
Right.
Because you got to have that K2 to activate something called osteocalcin. Now, without osteocalcin activated, can't get calcium to the bone. Don't care how much you take, won't get there. So it's a real big issue. And as the research has come out in probably the past 15 years, maybe tops, it's just unbelievable how many benefits this stuff really has. So K2 is something definitely to put on that list that you really need to be taking.
Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is B vitamins.
Yes.
Now, B vitamins, I think, are important for everyone, and stress depletes your B vitamins.
And we've all got that.
Everybody has stress. It seems like the last few years have been more stressful. So I think everybody probably needs to do a good B complex.
Right.
Again, testing will show your optimal levels. We are seeing, for some reason, way more people nowadays have low, really low, actual deficient B12 and folate. Thing is, you used to not see much folate deficiency, and we're seeing tons of it now.
Well, people aren't eating as many green leafy vegetables.
Maybe people aren't eating vegetables or eating more packaged processed food. So we do see a lot of deficiencies in those areas. All the B vitamins, I mean, we could do a whole show on just B vitamins and dosing because, B1 for kidneys, you want to go a little higher, like 300. Riboflavin, if it's for migraines, you want to go to 400. You want to go to, niacin, depending on if it's for cholesterol, you can go anywhere from 1,000. So that gets into very specific dosing. What we're just going to say in general is a good B complex with methyl forms of your B12 and folate. And I would do that just kind of as a generalized rule, and then depending on the problem, you can actually do things separately, because there's no doubt, like I said, every one of them has different conditions and you can go to high dosing on different ones. B6 is one of the ones you can get in trouble with too high of a dosage. You can't actually cause nerve damage with too high, but you can help nerve damage with enough. So there's a line there between too much and too little.
And with B6 that you mentioned, there's a difference between the forms of it too. Like we talk about the methylated form of B12 and folate. And B6 is the same way. We can have a pyridoxine hydrochloride, which is pretty much what it's the cheapest form. So it's going to be in a lot of your multi-formulas. And you can't get too much of that one. The P5P, which is a methylated or a reduced form of B6, not quite so bad, but you got to make sure it's that form factor first. So it's real critical as to what form you're taking those ones in. Another one that's really big is vitamin C. I mean, Lord, we get this
one. That's kind of like a common thing for taking your vitamin C.
Well, everybody should take vitamin C.
So how much do you take? And it's really, one of the rule of thumb used to be, take as much as your bowels can tolerate. In other words, you take it to bowel tolerance. You take too much, you're going to get a loose stool. Okay, and the reason is vitamin C is harsh on the gut. I mean, it really is. So if you take too much,
well, it's hard to absorb it.
You can't absorb it. That's right.
And so on regular vitamin C, you can only absorb at the best about 19% of it. So the rest of it is dumped into the bowels. That's why we always suggest liposomal C. Liposomal C is about 93% absorbable. So in our liposomal C, 1 teaspoon is like 1,200 milligrams, which is what we suggest on a daily basis. And it's 93% absorbable. So it's actually, and it doesn't cause the gut issues because you do absorb it. They can actually go real high on vitamin C IV. I mean, you see some of the doctors using IV vitamin C, which we don't do IVs. But they'll go to 10,000, 15,000,
they'll go to
20,000, 50,000. I mean, so you can, it's not, C just, if you take too much of unabsorbable C, it can cause a problem. And when we're dealing with problems on the liposomal C, we'll go even higher. But that's just kind of your minimal everyday dose is the 1 teaspoon a day.
No,
Yeah,
that's
but I drink a glass of orange juice every day. Isn't that good enough?
you
Well,
get a
it's
whole
nothing but
bunch of
sugar.
sugar. Yeah.
I was being
Mostly
facetious.
sugar.
I was being facetious.
I
I know,
understand.
I know.
But yeah, you get a lot of sugar that way.
Yeah, because we always tell people don't drink juice because it's just so much sugar.
Right.
But vitamin C is important. I mean,
is.
everybody has gotten more interested in it since COVID hit, and everybody was told to take D, C, and zinc. So they were, for the immune system. They've definitely shown that D helps with keeping you from getting as sick as often. And it's also made, and the liposomal form especially really helps with this because of what's with it, is the collagen. People don't realize that collagen breakdown is what makes wrinkles. So how do you keep collagen from breaking down? One of the main components is vitamin C.
Okay.
There
Yeah.
you go.
All right, 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We're talking about the optimal doses of common nutrients in your everyday diet. We'll be back in just a moment for our final segment and look at this week's special. And welcome back to our final segment of this morning's Doctor's Nutrition Live show. Let's go ahead and show you what our special is for this week.
It's the liposomal C that we just talked about in the last section. And like we got 25% off of it this week. This is the reason for the liposomal, again, like we said before in the last segment, it's so absorbable. 93% versus 19%.
Yep.
Huge absorption difference.
Yep, it
Huge.
is.
All
Well,
right.
next, we're going to get to some minerals.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to talk about some minerals, which are definitely nutrients that you want. Calcium, that is one that we actually hear people, the old school on calcium was to take 12 to 1,500 milligrams. We believe that is way too much in most people, way too much. If you get excess calcium and you're not utilizing it properly, you can lay down plaque, so that is known. You do, and some people want calcium again. Lab work can kind of tell us who needs it and who don't. And but our kind of rule of thumb is you don't want to go over about 600 milligrams unless it's absolutely you have a deficiency and don't absorb it properly or something. And when it comes to calcium, you do not want calcium carbonate, which is your least absorbable form. You want more like a citrate or a microcrystalline hydroxyapatite or there's definitely different forms of calcium that are actually absorbable, but you do not want to just go huge dosing. And when you take your calcium, we recommend you take magnesium with it. Now, there are the few exceptions. Some people will have, kidney issues. We don't go with high magnesium. So you got to be careful if you have a kidney problem. But magnesium is a big deficiency in the United States. They actually say that probably about 90% of the Americans are deficient in magnesium.
Yeah.
So with that high of a deficiency, and most people do need to take magnesium. And that is another one that the bowels will tell you when you get too much.
They will.
It will not, the thing is with the magnesium, too much will definitely give you diarrhea. And there's different forms. Citrate is real bad about giving you diarrhea, to where some of the other forms like glycinate is not. So you have taurate, malate, glycinate, citrate. There's a lot of different forms of magnesium. So that's another one that if you want to know which one might be best for you, that's why we're there, is to answer specific questions on what might be best for you. But I think magnesium is one that most people do need.
Okay. We have a question that someone called in. Rumor has it vitamin B is not absorbed very well when taken orally. True or false?
False.
False. Now, in some of your forms, that's why we say on B12, make sure it's methylated. On the cyanocobalamin, which is your old form B12, does not absorb very well from the stomach. That is actually true. But if you do a methyl form, it is absorbed from the stomach. Now, there's no doubt, sometimes under the tongue, and there's different people have different problems with their digestion. So as a whole, we see B12 levels come up when taken methyl form by mouth. And every once in a while, we see somebody that doesn't look to be absorbing it, so we'll use the liquid under the tongue, and it brings it right up just like a shot would. So that can be true and false, actually, but false
It's
as a whole,
false.
because it's not mostly false, because and then the other B vitamins are very well absorbed from the stomach.
All right. Thank you for your question.
Yeah.
896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We have a few minutes left in this morning show. So
We got to mention zinc and potassium.
Well, you got to talk about those. I mean, or you just
Like I said, we're going to run out of time before we talk about them all, but potassium's one you can absolutely get too much of.
Yeah.
And if you need it, though, nothing works like it does. I mean,
That's
so
true.
that's another one that the blood levels tell you what you need. You shouldn't never go over about 100 milligrams a day, probably without having levels tested.
Right.
And if you have high potassium, you don't want to take any. So that's kind of one of those that you definitely can get too much. Avocado is one of your best sources, which people don't realize that avocado is one of your great sources. Everybody thinks bananas, but bananas do have a lot of sugar. Avocados don't. So it's a really good food, and it has a lot more potassium than bananas.
Yeah.
And coconut water is another really good one.
Yeah, loaded.
Unsweetened coconut water, that is.
Yeah, yeah, it's loaded with it.
And I'd
so.
rather people get their potassium from food sources unless they have a specific deficiency where it needs to be supplemented.
Right.
Boost on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you got a deficiency or you got a problem, then yeah, we'll have to add something to it. But basically, that's another one that you can mostly get from your diet, like your vitamin K1.
Yeah. Now,
Absolutely.
zinc, that's been a big one.
Oh, huge.
Big one out there since COVID.
I was going to say, since COVID, we've talked about that several times.
Right, exactly. We have
times.
talked about the dosages. I think people need at least 25 milligrams a day, up to 50 milligrams a day. Long-term use on zinc, you shouldn't go over 50 long-term, not short-term, without supplementing copper and having your levels checked to see where you need both of those levels being. Because you don't want to take too much copper, but you don't want to be deficient in copper as well.
Right, and you know, and we see so many people coming in and they're taking, you know, and they talk to them and they say, well, I've been taking 100 milligrams of zinc for how long? Oh, for about 6 months. Okay, we potentially have a problem, but let's just back it down a little bit. And at that point, I usually suggest, let's do some lab work and find out if you've gotten these things completely out of balance at that point, because you can.
Right.
And it's real easy to substitute a little bit of copper if you need be.
Right.
But you
Or
just really,
back off a little bit on
or
the
back
zinc.
off a little bit on the zinc.
Now,
you know,
short term, if you're sick, you can
That's
go a
different.
little higher.
Yeah.
You can go up to 100 milligrams just short term for a week or something like that. You know, while you're sick, you can actually increase it a little bit, but you don't want, to me, that dosage long term.
Long term, right?
So,
Yeah. Another one
and-
that we see an awful lot of, or lack of, I guess, is iodine.
yes.
You know, did you look at-
Really?
Huh?
Iodine deficiency is
yeah.
huge. Well, why do they iodize salt? It's because there's a huge deficiency of iodine in the American diet. And seafood has iodine, so if you eat it every day, you might be okay. But when we check levels on iodine, many people are too low.
Most are too low.
So,
Yeah.
and on that, that really definitely depends on the person on dosing.
Yeah.
But you kind of want kind of a minimum of,
150 micrograms or so a day minimum.
that's way minimum.
That's more like two.
I do a
three-
6.25, which is 6,250, but I don't do it every day. I do it maybe 3 times a week.
Yeah, that's kind
So
of what
the
we
thing
do.
is
yeah.
it depends on the person, and you got to be careful. Too much iodine will be bad for the thyroid. Too little iodine
Bad for the thyroid.
is bad for the thyroid. And they've even shown now that iodine has a lot of new research on breast cancer prevention.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick, best source, somebody called in, what's the best source of coconut water? Should I make it myself or get it from a can?
I was going to say coconut's the best source. but,
Coconut's the best source, but around here we don't really have a lot of fresh coconuts. But so I don't know that we can. I don't see it very often around
I think
here.
you can buy it in a can and bottles and
Yeah.
stuff. You see it all the time. Just
in bottled, they're usually
Just
in
to make sure it
bottles.
doesn't have a bunch of sugar in
Yeah,
it.
just
Exactly.
Get
Don't
get
the
the unsweetened.
unsweetened.
One. Yeah.
And just real quick with selenium. Some people go too high on selenium. Never go over 400. 200 is usually plenty.
Plenty.
So 200 is usually plenty on selenium. Do not go over 400. Add everything you're taking together. Make sure you don't go over that.
And of course, that's why we always recommend you get blood work done to find out just
Yes.
exactly what you are deficient in.
Right.
Or maybe you're taking too much of. So anyway.
That's it.
Well, thank you for being here with us again this morning for our live show. We'll be back again next Monday morning as usual. Be careful out there. Have yourself a wonderful week. And we'll see you next Monday morning here on WLOX CBS.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.